Let's move on to some other issues. Boris Johnson, well, he's now well and truly not just in office, but in power as a British Prime Minister. And he welcomed 140 new MPs to the House of Commons overnight. Johnson will look to bring forward the Queen's speech this Thursday, where it's expected he will announce plans for his government that include enforcing harsher jail sentences for violent criminals, boosting school funding, and plans for Brexit to be completed by January 31st. Also in other news, 1 week on from the deadly explosion on White Island in New Zealand that killed at least 16 people, Jacinda Ardern has announced that the tour operators and the cruise ship companies, they are legally responsible for the safety of passengers and staff who were allowed to visit the volcanic island, despite warnings of volcanic activity in the days prior. Ardern has said that travel companies could face jail sentences and multi-million-dollar fines under New Zealand's workplace laws. Investigations editor for the Herald Sun, James Campbell, and writer Corinne Barraclough join me now. James, I'm going to go to you. You've just had the most whirlwind trip to the United Kingdom. You're obviously back here home now. Tell me, what was it like? Pretty extraordinary election.
It really was. We went up to Lincoln, which is a marginal seat that had gone red in 2017. Tories were hoping to get it back. They got it back. We spent the day up there just talking to people, walking around the streets. You could cut the hostility to Corbyn with a knife. People really didn't like him. They didn't like his policies. But it was very, very personal. It was far more personal than I've seen in an Australian election. They just thought he was just a disgrace and should not be the leader of the Labor Party.
Him or Labor, or a bit of both?
More him.
More him.
The policies were regarded, some people seem to think they were just sort of never going to happen stuff. I think the free university tuition was great. This one woman said, well, you know what, so 3 years of free money so they can get pissed. They just...
Sceptical.
Just weren't buying it. There was too much, there was too much stuff, too expensive. No one believed that he was going to be able to deliver it. They didn't like him. They didn't like him. They didn't like his associations. They thought he was unpatriotic. They thought he was anti the armed forces. They didn't think he liked the British government or the state. It was a whole... Yeah, it was comprehensive.
And what about Boris Johnson? And what about Brexit as issues?
I didn't really detect any great warmth for Johnson. And I think that was reflected actually in the votes. If you look at it, Johnson got 300,000 more votes than Theresa May did. The difference was Corbyn dropped 2.6 million votes between 2017 and today. And a lot of those votes went to Nigel Farage. A lot of people just stayed home. But there wasn't a comprehensive jump from red to blue, which is very interesting when you look at what Johnson's doing now. You know, he's got an aggressive program essentially to try and woo the people whose seats he won without winning their votes.
Yes, the borrowed vote.
Borrowed vote. He knows he's on probation with these people. He has an historic opportunity to lock their vote in next time, because next time the chances are there isn't going to be Nigel Farage around. He's got to win those votes himself next time if he's going to hold those seats, because if they go back to Labor, it's going to be a much more marginal proposition. It'll be like the 2015 and 2017 elections, which were very, very close.
Corinne, what struck you as you watched this election over a number of months? And I know we've been talking about Brexit for a long time here on the show, but what struck you about this election contest? And as the result came in on Thursday night or Friday morning our time, what does this say about left-right politics in Britain and indeed the West?
Well, I think we can safely say that the left is losing, and they still don't understand why. I think there were several things that struck me. I was born in the north of England, and then we moved down south supposedly for a better life, which says a lot, I think, about the north-south divide. It is very different in the north of England, and some of those seats that, as that red wall came down, and just seeing those turn, I never ever would have imagined that it was even possible. It just they've achieved something which is absolutely incredible, and it says a lot about just how loathed Labour is at this point. Watching the results come in, I think it was the geography and the magnitude of what they've managed to pull off there.
And just about incomes too. I mean, Stephen Conroy made the point to me You know, he's from a coal mining area originally. His family have been there for many generations, never voted Tory in their life. He said he had uncles that were voting Tory for the first time. More and more working class people, people that are worried about their job security, that are, you know, living in commission housing, as we would call it, are voting for Conservative. And we've seen this very much with Donald Trump, but we're now seeing this in Britain. And those who would call themselves progressives, money in their pocket, you know, the likelihood and the love of their passport and travelling overseas and in and out of Europe, as many of them who were Remainers live this sort of multinational life, are voting for the left. This is upending of the usual order.
Absolutely, and you know, it's really important to remember though that the UK is very divided. You know, the London lifestyle is very different to working class people in the north of England who perhaps go to the coast with their family on holiday. Their whole priorities are completely different. Their worldview is different. Their priorities are different, and I think it says a lot about Corbyn that even you know, directly as he was conceding defeat, he was still saying that they had the policies bang on. You know, that's shockingly misreading what's going on.
What's it say about Labor? What's the lessons for Labor as a movement around the world, but particularly Labor here, and Labor led by a man of the left in Anthony Albanese?
I think all of the Guardian stories should have come with trigger warnings for the ALP, because just when they were putting this in the rear-view mirror, reminded them that, you know, the problems they've got are problems that social democratic left-wing parties have everywhere. I don't think it's the same problems, same absence of a solution. They don't really know what to do about this. They've got two constituencies who are fundamentally at war with each other now. They've got, you know, the rich progressive and their poor, in many cases, younger allies. The young are not rich, and in the United Kingdom they are not doing well. Wages in the United Kingdom are, we should remember, still not recovered to what they were in 2008. People are earning less than they were before the GFC. The home ownership rates amongst the young there have collapsed. Now the young are more or less have become steadily more and more left-wing. And we're seeing that in Australia too.
And that's the hard left grievance politics.
Correct. They have grievances for whatever reason. The Corbynite hard left agenda speaks to them. But you've also got another disaffected group, which is the working class, who are also got their problems, but they don't buy this stuff. And they're still fed on. They're still very patriotic people.
Correct, and they're still fed on the belief that if you work hard, you can get it. That there's an inherent fairness in the system.
Correct.
Whereas the hard left blame everyone else for lack of advancement.
And I think the young don't think that the system's fair. They think the system's rigged, and whether they're right or wrong is a debate for another day. But that's what they've been taught. And they don't necessarily, and so the left-wing stuff is attractive to them. But the problem the Labor Party here and the Labor Party there has got is that these two positions, it's like trying to ride two horses, are going different directions. And they know they've got a problem, they don't know what to do about it. I'm not going to give them a solution, I'm not sure there is one.
Corinne, they've got a fundamental problem too, though, because their supporter base is at odds with the caucus membership, and this is in part what happens inside the Liberal Party too. The Liberal Party, or the coalition supporter base in Australia, is fundamentally centre-right Conservative, whereas the caucus or the party room of the coalition in Canberra is sort of 50-50. Their supporter base is 70-30. And we saw that with Malcolm Turnbull. It was disastrous, and it's disastrous for Labor too when they have a disconnect in Canberra as opposed to the people who can give them a government. And that's the difficulty to reconcile.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's the difference between the virtue signalling, big kind of leftist preaching versus working class people who are actually struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling to pay their bills. It's the same problems as we see here. Now, I think if we're looking at people who could potentially step in there, what they really need to do is be very careful with who they choose to be their next leader when Corbyn actually does finally do the right thing and step away. Rebecca Long-Bailey, I would say, is probably in a really good position. She's from a working class Manchester background. She's the MP for Salford, which is just outside Manchester, which is up in the north. And she comes from those working class roots, so she gets it. You know, she has that family background. So I think that who they choose as their leader is going to be important. And then obviously their key problem is what they actually stand for. They've got to address these key issues.
The problem with her is that she's the one the Corbynites want to keep. So I asked her what she like, and someone said to a Labor MP or ex-Labor MP said to me what she like. They said, oh, she's thick as shit in a bottle. The other one, the right want, is Jess Phillips, who's also from a working class background. The moderates, she's the great moderate hope. Long Bailey is, you know, you've only got to look at the way the people who are praising her to realise that she would just be Corbyn Mark II.
And this is why Corbyn,
a not very bright Corbyn.
And this is why he wants to stay in situ and keep the microphone, the megaphone of the leadership until such time as they choose a new leader, so he can settle her in and certainly get the candidate they want. Now,
and he should have gone. He should have gone.
Well,
on the spot.
he should have gone. Of course, he should, Corinne. But the problem is the authority now is leached out to such a broad membership base of anyone who could pony out £5 a number of years ago to join, which has diluted it away from just supporters, I guess, of Labor to green and hard left activists who will now determine the course of a once great party.
Absolutely, and they also have the same conversation as we see here around open borders. You know, they've got a multitude of really, really big, serious issues here, and hopefully, in the meantime, if Boris can keep up this kind of energy and the buzz and keep on marching forward, you know, his campaign was very much run on the 3 words of get Brexit done, and now he's very much in get things done. So if they can keep on doing this while Labour has a tailspin, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'll leave it here, but I mean, the challenge always is outside of the discipline of a campaign. There's not freezes you can hide in so readily. This is where the rubber's going to hit the road, whether that discipline, particularly with a third of the Commons being new MPs, that'll be the real challenge for them.